Nikki here. I'm here today to do a video that I'm calling The Usual Suspects. These are my favorite book, some of my favorite recent reads, a few of them being some of my favorite books of all time that are in genres I typically read. These are sci-fi, fantasy, like typical fantasy, not like Grimdark or Portal or anything, historical, and classics. These really are kind of my base genres that I absolutely adore. And there's a few books I've talked to death on here already, so I'm going to try not to take up too much of your time. The first one I'm going to talk about is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. This was just a really fun high fantasy. It was a little bit nostalgic, a little bit of fun. It read like a D&D campaign, and I just really enjoyed myself with this read through. The second book I'm going to talk about here is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is one of the few books I've read in the last few years that gave me like a really, really severe book hangover. I finished it and I thought about this book for the next week. One of the only other books that's ever really done that to me was Winter Garden. I think that was a Kristen Hanna, but I can't remember. But similar vibes in terms of the book hangover. All the Light We Cannot See, I just found it to be like a really interesting story about these two very interesting people who are on very different sides of the war. You have the one who's a blonde girl growing up in France pre-Nazi occupation, and then during the Nazi occupation, and then you have Warner, who is a boy who just kind of got sucked into the machinations of the Nazi Party and just kind of what it was like if you didn't necessarily believe, but just showing that some people just had to go along for the ride. And although I know a lot of people like Laurel's, I can't remember her whole name, The French Girl's Story a lot more, I particularly enjoyed both. And if you have a big love of World War II historical fiction and don't mind a plotting but very intricate and well-written story, I really recommend this one. Is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It is one of the best sci-fi books I've ever read, and the best that I've read this year so far. It is a really unique take on a first contact with aliens, and some unexpected things happened, but I enjoyed myself, and I was engaged through the majority of the book. There's a little bit in the middle that drags, but it really wasn't that bad. And overall, I really, really enjoyed my adventure with that cast. My fourth book is The Book of Lost Names by Kristin Harmel. This is a very recent read. I think I finished it at the end of August, beginning of September, and I was blown away. There's just beautiful relationships with the main character, with her love interest and her parents. There's like she's part of the French resistance during the war, and she's a forger, so she does all this stuff to help people get into Switzerland, and it's just the role she played and the things that happened in the book were absolutely phenomenal. And the concept of the actual Book of Lost Names that they create in the story is just, it's amazing, and there's something that's just very impactful about how they went about it that just really touched me deeply and kept me engaged the entire way through. And the love interest is not too shoehorned in. You end up, or at least I did, end up not minding that it was there because it didn't take away from her work and from her autonomy. And then my fifth and final book for this Usual Suspects video is Pride and Prejudice. I talked this book to goddamn death, so I'm not going to rant and rave too much about it because it is hands down in the top 3 of my favorite books ever. I love Darcy. I love Elizabeth. I love that they became better people for each other, and it's just a happy, funny, really entertaining love story. And if you like classics and like romances like that, read this book. And those are kind of my top 5 books in some of my top genres, and I will leave you here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!